But I think we still need those goals. We still need to find purpose. It's not too late to do the thing you've always wanted to do, or change a career, or write a book, or whatever this looks like, start a podcast. Finding those new goals, those new exciting things, because it is more important as we get older. We need that purpose, that direction, not less of it, but more of it.
Hello and welcome. Kate Champion here, and that's the voice of Carol Covino. Carol is a certified menopause specialist, and she's a fitness and nutrition coach for women over 45. She helps people optimize their health through nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle changes. Today, I am so excited to be able to share this inspirational, heartfelt conversation with you. Carol starts out by sharing more about her story, which includes her transition from marathon runner to national bodybuilding competitor at the age of 50, and her more recent experience with a spinal fusion surgery, which she is just recovering from. Of course, we can't be talking to Carol without talking about hormone health, the what, the why of menopause, peri-menopause, and everything hormones. Then we take a deep dive into working with and managing autoimmune disorders, seeing midlife as an opportunity, and learning how to thrive despite a surgery or a diagnosis. Throughout the episode, Carol shares so many tips and strategies, including things to help us stay strong and healthy for the long haul, things to help us set goals, and some tips for getting back on track if we've been out of the game or stuck. Of course, Carol wraps it all up with some wise sage advice. Everything we do here, from the podcast to the books to the communities, is all about supporting and inspiring you to live a longer, stronger, more intentional life. And this beautiful conversation covers it all. So no excuses to get out there and get going. If you're stuck or struggling, connect with Carol. The links will be in the show notes, or book a call with me and we can work through some things. Remember, also download your copy from Panic to Peace, your free guide, a must if you or a loved one is struggling with stress or anxiety. Everything can be found by visiting katechampionauthor.com. And whether you're listening for the first time or a regular, please know that I appreciate you, I support you, and I thank you so much for listening today. Okay, my friends, here's Carol. Hello, Carol. It is so nice to connect with you today. How are you?
I'm wonderful, Kate. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, we connected on your podcast a while back. I'm terrible with time. And after our conversation, I just felt like so much resonated with me. I just felt such a connection. And I'm so thankful, and thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
As always, I want to dive into your story and your background and a little bit about your journey. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, and listeners can get a better sense of who you are and where you are and how you got here.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm 62. I'm going to be 63 very soon, within a month or so, give or take a day. And really, I'm going to say, as far as health and fitness and that journey, it started in my late 40s, right around 50. So I was right on the edge of peri-menopause, going into menopause, and noticed some changes that I just didn't like. And so I set out to discover as much as I could about training, exercise, nutrition. And part of that journey was to sign up to do a bikini bodybuilding show, because I thought, okay, this will be something that spurs me forward to getting results, keeps me disciplined. I have a goal. I'm very goal oriented. So signed up to do that show, signed up with a coach. And that kind of started my transformation journey. And it just went from there. So I did the show and went on to do, oh my goodness, probably 16 more shows, most of those at the national level. Learned a lot about weight training, strength training, nutrition, began helping other women. And then as I went through that journey, I realized that there was such a need for women who are going through that perimenopausal window, because when I went through menopause, nobody was having open discussions. There wasn't talk. I mean, you would go to your doctor and your OBGYN really wasn't trained in hormones. They just be like, oh, that's just part of aging, and kind of send you on your way. And so that really spurred me to want to share more with women and to open up that conversation. And I love seeing what's happening right now with the open conversations.
That is quite a story. So there's a couple of things I want to jump in on that kind of caught my attention, my curiosity, some very different directions. But I do want to say, I think if I remember from our last conversation, you also had some health crises too before that. You had some autoimmune struggles. I mean, you had some pretty significant health things come up in your life. Was that a pivotal part of this kind of change in your direction towards kind of bodybuilding and bikini competitions? Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, definitely. So in my 40s, going through that perimenopausal window, I had a really rough ride where, those hormones are fluctuating. I was starting to have the brain fog, not sleeping well at night, a lot of the symptoms of menopause. And so that kind of started everything. And then at the time, I knew in my late 40s, I thought there's something else wrong. And later on, I was diagnosed with autoimmune, with rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatoid disease. And I can look back and realize that that was developing for many years prior. But my desire to do a show, I have to admit, initially that was spurred on by aesthetics. I wanted to look better. I'm like, how good can I look at 50? How can I kind of defy the norm? And then from there, as I progressed, I've learned more. I've had my own struggle with autoimmune. It's become something more to me. I'm less focused on the aesthetics and more focused on the health, the longevity, and health span now.
Yeah, I love that. And that's where there's a lot of resonation between us, because I also was diagnosed with a severe aggressive rheumatoid arthritis in my mid to late 30s, and really kind of took me out for a while. What do you think that was about for you? I have my own theories about kind of autoimmune disease. What do you think that was about for you? The autoimmune.
It's interesting. I've heard many different things about this, and I don't think it's one thing. So obviously gut health is part of that. And I look back and I realize I didn't have the best gut health. I didn't have the best nutrition through my 30s and 40s. So I definitely think that was a piece of it. But I've also heard that unresolved past trauma can be a part of this. Suddenly having something very stressful happen in your life can be a catalyst to getting autoimmune. So looking back, I think there was probably genetics, there was gut health. I wasn't eating the right things. I was under a lot of stress, and there was unresolved trauma, which I later unpacked and went through therapy. I still am in therapy with a wonderful, wonderful counselor who has really walked me through how to deal with this. And I think it's something that women hit midlife and maybe they have pushed some things aside. They're raising their kids, they're busy with their families, they're busy with their careers, and they're not making that connection of things that can kind of rear up around that menopausal window.
I think that is such a powerful statement, and I think that's so true. And I actually find that in my practice, I'm a therapist. So I work with a lot of people, a lot of women in this lifespan, and it does seem, right, that kind of perimenopause. It's a time where a lot comes up, a lot from the past. I think women have been so busy, right, kind of raising the kids and doing the soccer games and blah 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 on that hamster wheel, and then you get to this developmental stage, and the clouds open a little bit and there's more kind of comes up, right? Thoughts, feelings, stuff from the past, get more sense of what's happening in that nervous system. And I think it is a beautiful window, right? I think it's a window of opportunity for
Oh,
sure.
I agree. And if you think about what's happening to our bodies during that time, and it can start as early as our 30s, is we start to have a problem with cortisol, the fight or flight hormone cortisol. We don't regulate it as well. It can be too high. It can be high when it's supposed to be low, low when it's supposed to be high. We don't handle stress as well. Our heart rate variance starts to go down, which heart rate variance is a sign of how well we handle stress, just overall and in the moment, physical and mental stress. So we start to see all this kind of perfect storm brewing. And
Mm.
you're right, these things can just kind of, it can be an opportunity if we recognize what's going on. I know initially I just thought, what is wrong with me? This has got to be something with me. I look back and realize, no, this is not just me. It's part of that period of time and that transition.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I felt the same way. It's like, I kind of woke up one day and literally couldn't move and just like, what the heck is going on? I mean, I was fit and active, and but again, that emotional life was a disaster. I hadn't dealt with the grief, I hadn't dealt with the loss, I hadn't dealt with the trauma, and it was literally coming out of my body, and it made me stop right in my tracks. It made me look at my health and my diet and my mental health and really the stress levels and again all that crap I hadn't dealt with. So what was that like for you in that? Mine was a pretty rapid onset. What was that like? What was the rheumatoid arthritis like for you?
Well, looking back again, I recognized signs of getting up in the morning and having profound joint pain and always having to reach for the Advil bottle before I went to the gym, which wasn't the best thing. So I was like taking a lot of Advil. I was just noticing this increasing, especially in my feet. I would get up, hit the floor, and my feet would just feel, it would feel like I was walking on glass. And that was the first place that the rheumatoid affected me. Well, I was a marathon runner. So I thought, or I used to be a marathon runner. So I thought, oh, this is the running. This is just arthritis from the running. So I went to my podiatrist and he said, no, I think there's a greater problem here. And he showed me the x-rays and how the pattern of arthritis was like a mirror image. So if you just have osteoarthritis, it can be, one elbow, one shoulder, one hip, or
Mm,
it's different from side to side or joint to joint. This wasn't like a mirror image. And he said, we have an issue, sent me to a rheumatologist. And it took several months from there to get diagnosed because you kind of go in and out of flare-ups. And if you're not in a flare up, it won't always show up in the blood work. I don't know if you found that to be true, but I had to be full blown in a flare up for them to go, oh, there it is, which happened. I was training for a show. It was my first national show. I was so excited, doing great. 2 weeks before that, I was a personal trainer at the time. I remember I went to rack someone's weights, and it was just like you described. I felt like all of a sudden, all the energy went out of my body. And it seemed like I was, that dreamlike state where you're trying to run and you can't run. It felt like that.
wow.
And I happened to have a doctor's appointment that particular day, and they had run blood work and said, "Oh, we have a problem. There's definitely an issue here. Very high on some of the autoimmune markers of inflammation were extremely high." So that's kind of how it manifested for me. There were signs, but when it finally took hold, it did feel very sudden.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's intense. How are you doing now? How are you doing that? Where are you in this journey now? Because I know for some it's a lifelong thing. How are you doing now?
I still go into flare-ups. It's not as bad. So when I changed my nutrition and
Mm,
my diet became very anti-inflammatory, which just naturally happened with the bodybuilding. So that helped. Movement, exercise helps because you want to get that synovial fluid through the joints. managing my stress, my sleep, all of those things help, but it's never entirely disappeared. And I know people say that their autoimmune has gone completely into remission or they're healed. That's not been the case with me. I think by the time I realized what was happening, it had gone on. They even said this has been going on for years.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I do have times where it's difficult to manage and times where it's better than others. But I must say, lifestyle factors really have made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear you 110%. I just, the food, the movement, the hydration, again, dealing with the baggage, right? Whatever you
Yeah.
had with the trauma, the grief, the loss. I feel like that has also been a huge component for me personally as well, right? It's just like a whole clear out. You're clearing out the pantry, you're clearing out all the junk, right? You're taking all the bags to Goodwill and you're really unpacking a lot. And I think
Yes.
that made a huge difference. Huge difference.
Yes. There's
Yeah.
a doctor, and you may have heard her work. She's been on a lot of podcasts. Dr. Sarah Gottfried, I believe is her name. She started out OBGYN and into the kind of the hormone space. And she has recently shifted into the autoimmune space. And she is really big on, yes, trauma is a factor. And she herself had her own story of trauma developing autoimmune. And she said she just sees this pattern over and over again.
Wow, it's fascinating. When you were mentioned way back, you were mentioning like the hormones, right? And when you go to the GP or the GYN, they're really not looking at hormones, right? You get that 15-minute check-in and, they're really just kind of checking the boxes. But they're also not looking at trauma either, right? We're not
Mm-mm.
looking at some of these risk factors. And I think, she's really onto something.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And it's fascinating to listen to her talk. And I mean, the medical community really, it's not the doctor's fault. They're just not given the training. I've heard that they get some little they get practically zero nutrition training, like less than an hour, I think. And the same with the hormones. So if it's not relating to, say, pregnancy or surgery, they're not really being trained in that area.
That's right. And when you were talking about that earlier about, again, going to the doctors and the people, women are going in with some of these issues, right? I'm not sleeping well, or there's more irritability, or my skin's changing, or my hair's falling out. They're not, again, doctors aren't looking at the hormone thing. And in fact, I had a woman in yesterday who just had this conversation. She's been, working through some anxiety and things. And we kind of had this chat. And I said, have you looked at, I mean, she's in that kind of age range and she was giving me some of these symptoms. And I'm not an expert in hormones at all. And she was like, and I was like, have you checked your hormones? Are you kind of perimenopausal? And she said, I've been at the doctors and they haven't done any blood work, etc. And I said, well, how about let's look at that? Like, make an appointment, get a full blood panel. Let's look at your hormones and see how you're doing. But do you find that a lot that this is just being missed?
Yes, it's definitely being missed, or women are still they're still afraid of hormones because of the Women's Health Initiative study, which is a whole other thing to unpack. But
Mm.
I do see that a lot. I was very blessed because I found my nurse practitioner right in that window of time. I was working with a coach, training for a show, and she says, "You're training really hard. I don't know why you're not putting on the muscle." And so she said, I want you to see this nurse practitioner. She specializes in hormones. And at the time, I had no intention of doing HRT. I was terrified of it and met with her, and she's still my practitioner to this day. So I was extremely fortunate to be connected with her and have her help. But I will say this, I get a lot of women think, okay, if I just get the hormone replacement therapy, it just address the hormones, it's going to take care of everything, the weight gain, the brain fog, the belly fat. And it's just a piece of it. It's so many different things. It's all of the lifestyle factors, the nutrition, the exercise, the hydration, the sleep, the stress, and then the
Mm.
hormone replacement therapy. To me, that was like one missing piece that brought
Mm.
me the rest of the way.
Mm. I love the way you kind of frame that. I mean, you're really looking at this in a holistic sense, right? You're looking at the whole person, the whole body, kind of all the systems. So let's say, how would you help a woman? So they're coming to you, or they're going to the doctor, so they're listening to this, and they're checking up some of these symptoms in their mind. What are some next steps? What would you suggest to somebody that might be listening and thinking, oh, that sounds like me. What do I do about this?
I mean, always start with those lifestyle factors, taking a look at the nutrition. Are you getting enough protein? Are you eating foods that are anti-inflammatory, and the vegetables, the wild caught fish, all of those types of things. Looking at the sleep, that's huge, because you could make all the changes, and if sleep isn't there, I have found that, especially with weight loss, it just doesn't happen without sleep, because there's just this hormonal cascade that is set into motion by lack of sleep. Looking at blood glucose regulation, because as we move through menopause, we start to have an issue with blood sugar levels being dysregulated and insulin resistance. Even for people that have never had a family background of, say, diabetes or type 2 diabetes, it can just suddenly become an issue in that perimenopausal, menopausal window. So looking at all those factors, and then finding somebody who is what I call hormone literate, and somebody who, it's not one of these clinics, because I'm not a fan of some of these clinics that I don't know, somebody takes a class in how to do pellets, for instance, for testosterone, and all of a sudden, they're seeing patients for that. But really seeing somebody who has that additional training, that knowledge, and that's what I loved about my nurse practitioner. And she's my age, so she'd been through all of the things, and that made a difference too.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard. I think sometimes as women, we kind of have to push, right? If we want a little extra, because it's not typical, right? It's not the typical part of the checkup. So you might have to push, you might have to advocate for yourself. Like you said, you might have to find somebody that's within their kind of scope of practice and expertise for
Oh,
sure.
yes, definitely. Definitely. And, not being afraid to, have consultations. I mean, thankfully, there's even telemedicine now, and there's some wonderful resources for telemedicine, and people or women being able to connect with a doctor on that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking about menopause, and let's switch gears for a minute. Now let's talk about kind of health and fitness, and because we have some similar goals, right? We want to stay strong and healthy for the long haul, right? I mean, we just want to be able to kind of live life, be fit, be active, and be healthy for as long as we can, mentally, physically, and psychologically. So how do you help people kind of set goals and maybe get back on track, right? If they've been off, they've been off their game again, they've been busy, they've been maybe just depression, anxiety, kids, all the rest of it, and they want to get back in. And how would you help? What would you suggest for people that are trying to rebuild and set those goals and find purpose again?
I think starting with one thing at a time is really important, because I find that women come in, and it's natural, they want to do all the things and do them perfectly. And I've learned, and I'm sure you've learned this too, when you're coaching or working with people, if you throw too much, like, okay, let's look at your diet, let's look at your exercise, let's do yoga, let's meditate, it's overwhelming. And so I say, just work on one thing at a time. And what
Mm,
that one thing is, where you start, you might start with your sleep, you might start with your nutrition, you might start with walking, or with 2 days of strength training, or working with a trainer. Just start with one thing, get consistent with that one habit, and then add in the other things gradually.
mm. What about support, right? Kind of support community. How do you rebuild that? 'Cause I know a lot of women, again, have been so busy with life and kids that they've lost that sense of support and that sense of community. Do you think that's important? And what would you suggest around that?
Very important. And I think we saw this with the pandemic, and people being at home more than usual, not being out, not socializing and being around friends or family even. and that isolation. And I would say, having that support, whether it's, just through, being involved in your community, perhaps it's even having some type of online community, which is nice to be able to connect with women that way. But I say it's very important to not feel alone, because I know at a certain point when I was going through all of my health issues and whatnot, I felt really alone, like I was the only one struggling. And then I would say, be around positive, like-minded people. Because as I was speaking, I realized when I was going, getting diagnosed with rheumatoid, going through all of the things, and I thought, oh, I'll join this online community of other women who have RA. Well, it was everything in there was negative. It was everyone getting online in this group and giving, I mean, the worst things that were happening to them physically. And I thought, this isn't good for my mental health. I'm looking for women that are rising above this, that are thriving despite a diagnosis. And so really making sure, who are we surrounding ourselves with as far as support goes? Is it somebody bringing us down, or is it somebody edifying us?
That is beautiful and so powerful and so true, because we are soaking up that energy, right? We are soaking up that energy from the group or the people around us. So we absolutely want people that are going to lift us up, versus kind of like what I call the doom and gloom, right? And the fear and the kind of weighing heavily on us. So that is a fantastic point for sure. So I know you just had a spinal fusion, right? You
Yes.
just had another. I mean, again, you're fit, you're active, you're heading into 63, and you have just had a spinal fusion surgery. You're 4 weeks out from that. So I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't imagine what that has been like for you. So tell us a little bit about that, and how are you doing? And I want to check in on you.
Oh, absolutely. So it all started about 8 years ago, my back issues. And I remember just having this profound pain down one side of my body, my leg, down into my foot, and going numb, partially numb in my foot. And I didn't know what was happening. Like, I had no clue it was my back. I had never had nerve pain before, didn't know what it was. And did all the wrong things because I didn't know what I was dealing with. So I wound up just not being able to walk. Like, every time I would stand up and try to walk, the pain was so bad. Went through months of physical therapy, was told I would never lift weights again. They said, give it up. And I managed to come back from that. I slowly went through all the physical therapy, kind of went back to the drawing board, changed my routines, got away from lifting really, really heavy, especially on the lower body, and went on to do another show. I came back from that and did another show, but it never really went away. So I got it to where I could manage that pain, but that burning pain was always present, and that numbness down the leg was always present. So then a few years went past. I think it was about 3 years, happened again. Same thing, where I couldn't walk. Same exact thing, spinal injections. Then about a year ago, I recognized the signs. I'm like, oh no, here we go again. And I didn't get to where I couldn't walk, but I kept having to, couldn't hike anymore. Couldn't go cycling, couldn't go horseback riding. I kept having to throw things off the bus to keep going. And finally, I'm like, I've lived in pain for 8 years. And so I consulted with a neurosurgeon in Arizona. I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And he said, well, I can do this type of surgery. I think it will help you. It will clear the nerves. And I never thought I'd have surgery. I was dead set against it, dead set against spinal fusion. But you reach a point where you want your life back in some capacity. And I was still lifting, still training, still working out, but I kept just modifying and throwing things out because I couldn't do them anymore. So had the surgery 4 weeks ago. It was successful. He was able to clear all of the nerves. And so I
Mm.
am in a back brace and I'm in a healing process for the next couple of months before some of the restrictions get lifted. But I will say this, if this is something you're going through or something similar, whether it's knee or shoulder or chronic illness, it's really staying positive as much as you can and finding the things that you can do. So, for instance, I am able to do a lot of walking and I can do the recumbent bike and I can do small little baby weights that are less than 10 pounds. So, I do everything I can do to move. And is it optimal? No, but just keep going. I mean, the last thing we want to do is just completely shut down, not do anything, say, oh, woe is me, you know, and it can be easy to do if you're in that modes kind of stuck in the house and all of that. So it's really helped me to just get out, take my walks every day, take them outside and keep my mind as positive as possible.
Wow, that is one heck of a journey. That really is. And you made so many wonderful points and so many tips there for people. What about the mental piece of that? Because I don't know about you, but kind of the working out, the running, hiking, etc., is a really big part of my mental health. How are you doing in that sense? I mean, I can imagine there's some grumbly thoughts and just some frustration at times, right? Even though we want to keep positive, absolutely. So how are you doing in that regard?
It has been challenging. So just to kind of give a really brief background, my entire life, I've always had a problem with like what I call a low level depression, like not where you're clinically depressed or can't get out of bed, but just this kind of low level that at times would go up a little bit. At times it feels like it's not there. So I've always had that. And I think for me, one of my ways of dealing, of coping, was to be extremely physically active. Like back in the day, it was the marathons, it was the 100-mile century bike rides, it was the long hikes that, backpacking and being out. You can relate to this. And it was
Yeah.
my mental health. And so when you have an injury, this happened to me the first time 8 years ago, you're forced to sit with your discomfort a little bit. And that's not easy.
Yeah.
you're you're forced to feel things that maybe you don't feel if you're really really active and you're pushing and so that is challenging and this has been challenging and so I've had to work on that. It's definitely there. It creeps in and I can feel it. I recognize the signs. It's like, oh no no no. So I try to surround myself, with things that spiritually are uplifting,
Mm.
mentally are uplifting, whether it's listening to a podcast, reading a book, time with my family, my pets. And then, like I said, getting out and walking has been, it's been my saving grace right there.
Mm, mm. I really thank you for sharing that and getting a little vulnerable because that is so important, right? The mental health piece is so important, and like I said, I connect with that because it's also a big part of my mental health. I really feel it, right? If I haven't been out and on the trail or done that backpacking, whatever. So yes, yes. So as we begin to kind of wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to kind of add or share or give listeners with regard to tips
Yeah.
and strategies?
It's something that I talk about quite a lot with my community, but it's finding purpose in those years above 50, above 60. And I mean, continuing on, I'm sure I'll be doing the same thing above 70. I think that we need goals and purpose more as we get older and not less. And there seems to be this prevailing idea that we should be letting go of things as we get older. And yeah, let go of the things that don't light us up, don't serve us, or weigh us down. But I think we still need those goals. We still need to find purpose. It's not too late to do the thing you've always wanted to do, or change a career or write a book or whatever this looks like, start a podcast. finding those new goals, those new exciting things, because it is more important as we get older. We need that purpose, that direction, not less of it, but more of it.
Yeah, I love that. That's really, really powerful. And again, it's another place that we really resonate because I wrote the book called Never Too Late because I believe,
Yes.
right? It is never too late to start something new, to try something new, to push yourself out of your comfort zone, to just, how do you want to live this life, right? We get one time here, and how do you want to use it? And if we can stay active and healthy and well for the long haul, I mean, there's no reason why not, right? There's no reason why we just can't keep learning and growing and discovering.
Oh, absolutely. And that, excuse me, neuroplasticity of the brain, so
Mm-hmm.
important, especially as we get older and women are more vulnerable to cognitive issues. And I think, of course, part of it is how we care for ourselves, nutrition, lifestyle. But the other part is using our mind and learning new things.
Yeah, and I think that's why traveling, I'm a big traveler, that's why traveling, right, and trying new things is so important because it's novelty, right? And the brain likes novelty. It likes to learn something new. It likes to get out of the comfort zone. It likes to just experiment and be curious. There's a very powerful process kind of cognitively. So to explore, right? To kind of explore and discover. That's
Yes.
powerful medicine.
Yes. And do something a little scary too. I would say a little outside that comfort zone that makes you go, ooh, for me, getting on that stage was terrifying
I
because I'm not a
can't.
stage person. I'm an introvert, and really that's not my personality. But you do something like that, and then your mind is going, oh, okay, what's next? What's next? What can I do next?
Yeah, that is powerful too, because that for me, just thinking about that would be terrifying. So yeah, I totally hear you. Totally hear you. So my final question, if you had some kind of sage advice for listeners about really living intentionally, what might you share? What might you say to the listeners?
Mm, just really finding what lights you up, and then maybe letting go of some things that weigh you down. And that's something that's really come to me through this surgery of not allowing things past my boundaries that bring me down, because the years, the time is so precious, and thinking, how do I want to feel, how do I want to live, and really finding what lights you up. Now, we can't be happy every minute of the day, obviously, but just finding overall those things that light you up, and then setting those boundaries, because I find women sometimes we allow things into our life that are weighing us down.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And for me, that's really living intentionally, right? It's really trying to create this heartfelt life, right? What do I really want? What's really my purpose? What are my values? And kind of setting your compass kind of towards that. And then I love the boundaries, right? Because the boundaries come in and they help you stay on track, right? Versus being pulled in a gazillion directions. So that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're so welcome. Thank you.
So, Carol, where can people find you if they want to connect, learn more about what you do? Where can people find you?
Well, they can go to my website, which is just carolcovino.com. I have a book, Finding Purpose in the Pause, Your Guide to Thriving in Menopause and Beyond. That's on Amazon. A podcast, Forever Fit with Carol Covino, that you were on. And then also Instagram is probably where I'm most active, and it's at Carol Covino Fitness.
I will make sure I put all those links in the show notes. And I would encourage you to check Carol out. She is amazing. She's lovely from the inside and the outside. I mean, she is truly inspirational, and she's really got the lived experience as well as the kind of the fitness part of it. So check her out. Carol, thank you so much for your time today. I just really appreciate you sharing your story, and I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare-related treatment. For any questions about your condition and or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.